Dr. Laura Cavalli, and I would just ask Dr. Cavalli to introduce herself and please declare any potential conflict of interest right before you deliver your remarks, and you'll have 5 minutes followed by questions from the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. And good morning, everybody. I'm Lara Cavalli. I'm the head of the medical affairs at Pierre Fabre Pharmaceutical. I do not have any other conflict except that I obviously am an employee of the sponsor. Pierre Fabre Pharmaceutical is a newly established US subsidiary of Pierre Fabre Laboratoire. I joined Pierre Fabre early this year after nearly 2 decades between academia and industry, focused on oncology and hematology research. I really appreciate the opportunity to participate in this town hall today, and congratulations on a great meeting so far. I really appreciated the discussion. As we've heard, EBV positive PTLD is an ultra-rare and often deadly malignancy. Only a few hundred cases of relapsed refractory EBV positive PTLD are reported in the US each year. EBV positive PTLD can impact both children and adults following a solid organ or hematopoietic stem cell transplant. The condition occurs when a patient's T-cell immunity is compromised by immunosuppression. The consequences of this lymphoma are devastating for patients who have already endured substantial impacts from receiving a transplant. Additionally, as the PTLD community has explained, the severity of the disease and the side effects of current treatment impose a tremendous burden, not only on patients, but also on caregivers. The psychosocial and economic impact is substantial and worthy of consideration. Unfortunately, approximately 1/3 of EBV positive PTLD patients do not respond to the current standard of care. And within this subset, there's a median overall survival of only about 3 weeks to a few months, depending on the type of transplant. With such a substantial burden and the lack of any FDA-approved therapy, there's a critical need for an effective, safe, and life-saving therapy. Tabelecleucel, also referred to as tab-cel, represents a potentially transformative treatment. Recognizing this, the Food and Drug Administration has granted breakthrough therapy designation and priority review with a target action date of January 15, 2025. We are very pleased that after reviewing the clinical data, including the phase 3 ALLELE trial, ICER determined that tab-cel provides a high certainty of a substantial net health benefit versus usual care, giving it the highest possible evidence rating of A. Specifically in the ALLELE trial, the overall response rate was 51% with a median duration of response of 23 months, which is a durable response of nearly 2 years. Overall survival at 1 year was 61%, which is remarkable in a deadly condition where the median survival is only a few weeks to months after the first-line treatment. Safety profile remains consistent across the clinical trials, expanded access program, regardless of type of transplant. In the ALLELE study, there were no reported adverse reactions of special interest, including cytokine release syndrome, immune effector cell-associated neurotoxicity syndrome, or tumor flare reaction. We continue to monitor long-term safety and clinical outcomes for these patients and look forward to presenting this data in the near future. tab-cel's unique characteristics will help to improve patient care and access. It is not associated with safety risks that usually require inpatient monitoring, such as cytokine release syndrome or neurotoxicity. And unlike other cell therapy, tab-cel is donor-derived and off-the-shelf. It is readily available and can be administered within a few days without lymphodepletion in inpatient or outpatient setting. ICER has recognized that these characteristics offer the opportunity to broaden patient access to timely treatment. Certainly, this is important in a disease where quick access to treatment can be a matter of life or death. In closing, we stand at the cusp of a promising time for patients living with relapsed refractory EBV positive PTLD. We are working diligently to make tab-cel available to patients. We aim to ensure that every patient who could benefit from tab-cel has access to it. On behalf of Pierre Fabre Pharmaceuticals, I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Cavalli, and thank you for joining us. I guess we have a few minutes for questions. I'll lead by asking if you were invited to the policy roundtable, and if so, what was your response to that invitation?
Yes, thank you. We were invited, and we, at the client participation, as you can imagine, we are in a very critical moment with the activities within the company as we are preparing for tab-cel commercialization, and as we are very much involved within the tab-cel filing together with our partner Atara. But thank you for the invite.
No, we're delighted to have you, and I think your public comments are really helpful to our deliberation. I recognize that you're busy with the filing, but I think it would have been more helpful to have attended the policy roundtable. Obviously, the principle of this process is public deliberation and getting people to come to the table, and that process is an open process that, rooted in evidence, can really establish consensus about how to improve access to new therapies for patients who really need it. I'm a physician. It's one of the hardest things in medicine when we think someone needs something, but there's a problem with access. And I think that this process is meant to break down barriers and establish consensus on access. So really appreciate your comments. Congratulations on bringing this product to market, but also would have loved to have you at the roundtable this afternoon. Dr. Nicoforo, I think you have a question.
I actually have a comment because, as Dr. Cavalli emphasized, which we hadn't gotten to before, not only is this therapy, as our patient advocate Doug, you attested to very well in your case and in the vast majority of cases, incredibly well tolerated, it's actually very easy to give, right? And I've talked about other trends and other products in the cell therapy field that may resonate with other clinical providers and patients. And these cells are something that I have given mostly in clinic, not requiring hospitalization. Unlike some other cell therapies, there's no chemotherapy beforehand to prep the body for them, right? And they literally, in most cases, go in over 15 minutes. We watch the patient for 30 minutes and they go home. So, right, as long as they didn't otherwise need to be hospitalized. So I think that in terms of not just the toxicities after you get it, but the process of receiving them and the availability in that way for different clinical groups to be able to offer is something important because it impacts patient access. And then the other thing that we hadn't emphasized is, as opposed to other cell therapies where you need to collect the cells first and then get them to the patient with manufacturing in the middle, these are off the shelf. There's an upfront step, as Dr. Lin had mentioned, in terms of some typing to figure out if there's a match in the bank, which is specifically designed to cover 95+% of the population in general. So I think emphasizing those aspects that improve access is something we had missed before, and I just wanted to highlight.
Thank you so much. Other questions or comments from anyone, from the CEPAC or from the clinical experts or the patient experts for Dr. Cavalli? Dr. Coopers.
Thank you. And Dr. Cavalli, I'm aware that we don't yet have a price on the medication, but I'm also not sure if you can answer this, but is there any anticipated performance guarantee on the medication for those that are paying for it?
No, we don't have this information yet.
Okay.
Other questions for Dr. Cavalli? I am not seeing any, just making sure the chat too. So with that,